to review the second FRQ from the double FRQ the other day. This one you guys did much better on as far as scores go. But things like this one, they're likely not to ask, like, I don't know that they would have an FRQ like this, especially worded like this, because, again, you can look up answers. Like, you've got the introduction, the modern state system is engaged in a struggle between the forces of supranationalism and devolution. Now, they very well could ask you questions about those terms, but probably not anything like A, because A says define both terms. They're not going to ask any definition questions. They're telling us. Define both terms and give a geographic example. Most of you did very well there. Supranationalism is two or more countries working together politically, economically, or militarily, or all the above to have a mutual goal accomplished, and they're sacrificing sovereignty to do that. Examples are boatloads of examples. It could be the United Nations. It could be OPEC. OPEC's been in the news a lot lately. It could be NAFTA or the new NAFTA, the USMCA. You could talk about the ASEAN. You could talk about, I don't know. We could go on and on and on. Then on devolution, devolution is the breaking down of power from the federal government to the central government to the local levels of government, or potentially the breaking away regionally of a part of a state from the rest of the state. Some of you used examples on that. Be careful, though. You can't just say an example is Yugoslavia. You've got to say an example is the breaking up of Yugoslavia into several other countries. Because it's not devolution if you just say an example is Yugoslavia. No. Yugoslavia is a state, was a state. That's what it is. Devolution is the breaking down of it in the 90s. You could say the Soviet Union falling apart in the 90s. You could say South Sudan splitting into two different countries. You could say the British giving more power to local places. But remember one thing you can't say, and this is a little tricky. You can't say Quebec in Canada, because Quebec has always had local authority and power in Canada. Nothing's changed. It's only devolution if there is a process of change of more power going to the local level. So careful on that one. B part, with reference to the political and economic geography of Europe, briefly discuss three changes resulting from supranationalism. If you're talking Europe, you're talking European Union. And you got to be talking like currency, the euro, free trade among countries with no tariffs, common policies of education and the environment. You're talking passport-free zones. The passport-free zone, and this is a term I don't think we actually mentioned in class, it is called the Schengen zone. The Schengen zone it means you are in the zone where you can go from country to country without having to have a different ID or anything like that. And then the Eurozone is where everybody uses the euro. Now, the problem we had on B part is you will notice right here, it says discuss. You can't just list, they've got a common currency, they have free borders. Even if you're totally accurate, you will get zero points for just listing the changes. Discuss. Discuss means, even if it says briefly, at least a couple sentences. You have to know what you're talking about and not just look up an answer. Okay? With reference to political and economic geography on C part, briefly discuss three changes resulting from devolution. Here's where you could think about this. Now, it does not say discuss three examples of devolution. It says three changes. So you can't say the breakup of the Soviet Union, the breakup of Yugoslavia, and the breakup of Spain, or potentially more local power there. That would be examples. Changes include things like when devolution takes place, local regions get more power because the government concedes that power to those areas and they get to make more local decisions. Notice my discussion part. It's brief, but it is a discussion. Or new states are created as places like the Soviet Union break apart. See, I can put an example in there, but my change is new states being created. I also may say something like places suffer from political or economic instability because they had been part of a bigger state, and now a Croatia has to be able to do things on its own. It's got to make up its own trade deals. It's got to come up with its own government structure and court structure. Notice my discussion. In this last month, I need to pull out of some of you guys more discussion and explanation, and we got to get to that. That's what's making the difference. The answers on this was not bad. Whether you looked them up or not, the answers are okay. But what we have to get better at is discussion. For practice, take these ideas like supranationalism and devolution And think about this. I've often did this for practice on Super FRQs. This is great review. What if you were asked this type of question, but you were limited to a certain part of the world? Like explain and give an example of supranationalism and how it's affected East Asia. Do the same for Southeast Asia. Do the same for Latin America. Do the same for Western Europe or Europe. Do the same for Sub-Saharan Africa, African Union. Do the same thing for devolution. How has devolution impacted Central Asia in modern history? How has devolution impacted the United States? North America, South America. Take it by region. That would be tremendous practice. If you do that right, you're probably going to have some questions. Shoot those questions at me. I'll be happy to answer them. But overall, pretty good work on this FRQ. But we got to get from, we're not just looking stuff up, we got to explain and discuss. Let me know if you have questions.